Welcome to the future. You've seen the recruitment posters. You've paid your non-refundable deposit. You've been promised a sealed, secure sanctuary from the coming atomic storm. Vault-Tec doesn't just build shelters, they build dreams. At least that's what the marketing brochure said. But you made a crucial mistake. You forgot to read the fine print. And in the dark, twisted world of Vault-Tec, the fine print is where the real nightmares live. Some vaults killed you quickly. These ones made sure you suffered first. We're not talking about a quick, painless death from a direct nuke or a radiation dose. No. Today, you are descending into 5 Vault-Tec facilities where survival wasn't a promise. It was a sentence to a slow, methodical, agonizing degradation. These vaults were designed to peel away your humanity, generation by generation, until you completely forget what it ever felt like to be human. You didn't survive the apocalypse. You survived long enough to become Vault-Tec's next experiment. So, let's see what flavor of hell Vault-Tec has prepared for you today.
Vault 108, the comedy of identical terrors. We start with a vault that sounds, at first, like a bad sitcom premise. Only the punchline is a bloody coup and a shattered mind. Vault 108 was advertised as a standard research facility located under the DC ruins. But its true mission was to study leadership vacuums, power grid failures, and the terrifying limits of human cloning. Imagine waking up surrounded by hundreds of people with your exact face. At first, the human staff thought they had cloning under control. They created one clone of a man named Gary, then another, then dozens. But with each cloning cycle, something went deeply, violently wrong. The clones grew intensely hostile to anyone who wasn't a duplicate of themselves. Imagine being one of the original scientists trapped underground as the clone population reaches critical mass. The Garys didn't just break their containment, they hunted the non-cloned staff like animals. They didn't build a new society. They established a feral, tribal order of identical lookalikes who recognized only their own name. By the time you stumble into this vault, it is a silent tomb, where the only remaining living things are clones who have lost all human language. They wander the blood-stained hallways, clutching rusted pipes, waiting to crush the skull of any outsider. Imagine a place where your best friend, your boss, your enemy, and your mirror reflection are all the exact same violently insane person. Vault 108 proved that when you completely copy a human being, you don't get a double. You get a monster. Vault 87, the genesis of the Green Plague. Now, let's step things up a notch. Vault 108 only messed with your mind. Vault 87 wants to completely rewrite your biology. Hidden deep beneath the capital wasteland, this facility was never meant to save anyone. It was a massive, military-grade lab designed to test the Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV. You think becoming a super mutant happens overnight. It doesn't. It is a slow, bone-shattering nightmare. The original dwellers were escorted to sterile medical chambers under the guise of mandatory pre-war radiation screening. Instead, they were locked inside glass cells and exposed to aerosolized strains of the virus. Imagine watching your skin turn a sickening leathery green while your muscles tear apart and reform with unnatural density. Your mind doesn't snap instantly. You remember your name, your family, and your human life.
Even as the viral corruption eats away at your frontal lobe, replacing your thoughts with a raw, uncontrollable hunger for violence.
But the real horror of Vault 87 isn't just what happened to the first generation. It's what came after. Super mutants are entirely sterile. They cannot biologically reproduce. So, after they shattered the facility and slaughtered the original Vault-Tec scientists,
They realized they needed a new source of raw genetic material to sustain their numbers. For over 2 centuries, the creatures of Vault 87 have been raiding the surface, dragging screaming wastelanders back into the depths of this green hell and throwing them into the FEV vats. The massive, mutated beasts you fight on the surface aren't aliens. They are the former dwellers and kidnapped survivors, twisted into an immortal army that wants to erase humanity entirely. Vault 11. The Sacrifice of Democracy. So far, we've seen genetic monsters and cloned psychos, but let's look at what happens when Vault-Tec lets normal, civilized citizens run the experiment. Vault 11 was built in the Mojave Desert. It was advertised as a democratic utopia where the population would self-govern without an aggressive overseer. For 200 years, your neighbors vote someone to die. Next year, it might be you. When the vault doors sealed, the central computer issued a cold ultimatum. Every year, the dwellers must select one person from their population to be escorted to the sacrificial chamber and executed. If they refused, the computer promised to vent all oxygen and kill everyone inside. Out of pure self-preservation, democracy became an engine for institutionalized murder. The dwellers decided that whoever was elected overseer would automatically become the sacrifice at the end of their term. Imagine the political campaigns in Vault 11. You aren't voting for a candidate because you like their policies. You are forming corrupt voting blocks, extorting neighbors, and fabricating scandals just to ensure that the person you hate wins the election and dies. For generations, this system tore human morality apart until a brutal civil war broke out over a rigged election, leaving only 5 people alive in the entire facility. Tired of the bloodshed, those final 5 survivors walked to the central mainframe, stood before the execution lasers, and told the computer that they refused to sacrifice anyone else. And that's when Vault-Tec delivered its most vicious punchline. The computer shut down the lasers, unlocked the main blast doors, and played a pre-recorded congratulatory message. There was never a threat. If the first generation
Had simply refused to kill on day 1, everyone would have walked out free. Vault 11 didn't need monsters to destroy its people. It proved that fear is more than enough to make us destroy ourselves. Vault 68 and 69, the cruel mathematics of gender. Vault-Tec loved to use statistical imbalances to watch human psychology collapse under pressure. Vault 68 and 69 are the purest examples of this cruel mathematics.
They were twin facilities built with identical structural layouts, but completely inverted population ratios. Vault 68 was sealed with 999 men and exactly 1 woman. Vault 69 was sealed with 999 women and exactly 1 man. Very little official data survived from these twin facilities. Vault-Tec left no detailed terminal logs, no dynamic recordings of the daily life inside. They simply locked the heavy steel doors, walked away, and let the math do the talking. But you don't need a medical report to understand the psychological horror of these numbers.
Imagine entering Vault 68 as an ordinary citizen, looking around the atrium and slowly realizing that your biological drive to build a future, to raise families, or to maintain a stable moral community has been mathematically strangled at birth. When you place 1,000 people in total isolation with only a single link to reproductive survival, the breakdown of law and basic empathy isn't a possibility. It's a certainty. Factions would inevitably form, turning the sole target of the experiment
into an asset to be controlled through absolute savagery. Vault-Tec didn't need to build elaborate trap rooms for Vaults 68 and 69. They simply engineered a demographic prison, turned off the lights, and watched from the shadows as human civilization predictably tore itself into oblivion. Vault 112, the virtual inferno. Finally, we arrive at what stands as Vault-Tec's single most sadistic accomplishment. A place where the concepts of death and survival lose all meaning, and the only constant is a nightmare that never ends. Welcome to Vault 112. This small facility was reserved for the elite minds of the pre-war world. They weren't given living quarters. They were immediately placed into high-tech stasis pods called tranquility loungers. Their physical bodies were suspended in a permanent vegetative coma, while their minds were uploaded into a shared virtual reality network. To the residents, it looked like paradise. Tranquility Lane, a sun-drenched, idealized 1950s American suburb with white picket fences. But the nightmare of Vault 112 lies in the neighboring pod. Right next to them, sealed in his own metallic coffin, lay Dr. Stanislaus Braun, the creator of the simulation, who possessed absolute control.
Braun's physical body has been withering into a skeletal husk for over 2 centuries, just like the others. But inside the mainframe, he made himself an immortal, omnipotent god. And he grew bored of paradise. To pass the centuries, Braun turned his perfect virtual world into a private torture chamber. Imagine living in a peaceful neighborhood, watching a maniac butcher your virtual family, feeling the cold steel of a blade cut your throat, and dying in agonizing pain, only to wake up a second later with your memory wiped, forced to play the game all over again. Braun has reset the simulation thousands of times, inventing new psychological horrors just to hear his captive dwellers scream. In Vault 112, you are denied the mercy of a final rest. Your mind is completely intact, trapped forever in a digital loop controlled by a decaying madman who will never let you die. It is the ultimate expression of Vault-Tec's true philosophy, that given absolute power and zero accountability, humanity will always turn paradise into a perfect, inescapable hell. And that is the devastating truth of the vaults. The real monsters never came from the radiation of the wasteland.
They were always downstairs, running the simulation and making sure that your survival was the most agonizing part of the apocalypse.